right, let's not beat around the bush. Let's go straight to the phone line as we are kicking off hour number 3. Normally at 9:30. Bumped up to 9 a.m. today. Not an early riser, so huge thank you for making it happen. My man, Nick Underhill, Nick_Underhill, New Orleans.football. You already know. Sign up today. If you're a Saints fan, it is the best Saints info, and you support Nick directly. No BS. Nobody else has any other hands in the pot. Okay, so go to neworleans.football. Nick, what's up, man?
Yeah, I'll get up a little earlier now that Hester's on the show. So that's a benefit for you guys.
Gosh, thank you, Nick.
Okay.
That is
okay.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I see how it is. Okay, Nick, let's talk about how it is, though, with the New Orleans Saints, because you have been at the forefront of this, and you have been hammering this home to anybody who will listen, like the man with the hell sign wrapped around your neck yelling on the street corner. You're like, look, this year's cap is not the problem, okay? The problem is next year's cap. So kind of explain to our listeners why that is the case.
Yeah, and problem might even be a strong word for that, but it is a bigger issue for sure. If they get the TV contracts done and people keep getting vaccinated, stadiums fill up, it seems like the cap probably will go up next year. So that'll help a little bit. But if it stays flat or it doesn't go up as much as expected, I think you do start to run into problems, because what you have to do this year to keep the team together is you're restructuring these contracts and you're pushing the money forward. And, that allows you to have money now, but you have a problem next year. So you can afford Cam Jordan, lower his number this year by restructuring his contract, but now next year he counts $20 million against the cap. And that's a strategy the Saints have employed for a lot of years, but they would do it with one or two guys, and you would attach that money to someone like, Drew Brees, and then spread it out a bunch of different places. But now that instead of pushing $20 million ahead, you're probably pushing $30, $40 million ahead, and that money all has to go somewhere. And at some point, you run out of room to push, or you get yourself tied into really bad contracts. And I think one of the things the Saints have done while managing the cap is that they've avoided those bad contracts. And when people talk about cap hell, to me, that's when you have to shed all these contracts because you're paying people you don't want to be paying, and you have money tied up in places, and you don't have the flexibility to do anything. And, while the Saints have kicked the can, they've kicked the can in intelligent ways, and they've moved that money around. Like, they have $6 million next year on Alvin Kamara, which you're fine with it, that you're going to end up kicking. But if you're tied in for a long time, now all of a sudden Cam Jordan's at $20 million, $30 million at 33 years old. That isn't the situation you want to be in. And I think that there's some realization that they're going to have to absorb some dead money at some point and just kind of reset. And that's okay if your cap's at, $215 million, $220 million. But if it's down at 185 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, you're in significant trouble, because at a certain point, you get that heap of trash underneath the rug in the living room, and it starts spilling out the sides. And I think next year would be the year, if the cap doesn't go up, that you're going to start seeing some of that stuff come out the side.
Okay, so then so much is reliant upon the cap taking that jump next year. There is this theory out there, I want to get your take on it, that the new Dak contract maybe speaks to Jerry Jones having some info that a massive TV deal is down the road. And then if that is the case, what do you think a potentially realistic number for that cap jump could be? Like, how significant of a jump could it be?
I do think that's probably a little bit telling. Jerry usually knows those things before everybody else, and he's on those committees. So I would assume he does have some insight there. And, it does seem like there's been a handful of reports over the last few weeks about things getting closer in a few different areas. And, with these streaming deals and that, I think that there's probably a good chance that goes up, a lot. And if there's a 17th game, I think that helps as well. So I think there is a lot of reasons for optimism for next year, for, the finances to start looking a little bit more normal. Man, as far as the gas, I don't know. I mean, if it gets over 200 million, and I think it could, and I think maybe even this year's could be a little bit higher than normal, I'm sorry, what is expected. They're expecting it to be at 185 now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit higher. Just, they're keeping everybody waiting. It's later than it's ever been with this number coming out. And I think they're kind of trying to see where these TV deals are going to end up so that they can, maybe allocate a little bit more resources this year. And there isn't quite as much of a bloodletting, because, look, the owners want to make their money, but they also aren't idiots. Like, if there's a ton of guys getting cut, and you have to start cutting name players to fit, under the cap. I think that's bad business for the whole league, and nobody really wants to see that happen. it sucks for the middle class guys. I think that's going to be the biggest hurt this year is that the middle class is going to kind of get squeezed out, and your $3 million players like Josh Hill are just not going to have jobs at that price, and they're going to hit the market and end up having to sign for $990,000 or whatever the league minimum is. So that's going to be tough, and I think that's where it's going to hurt the Saints the most. The last few years, I think one of the hallmarks of this team is that they've had really good backups, and I don't know this year if they're going to have that same quality depth, but that's going to be a problem, I think across the whole league. But as far as the estimate on the cap, I mean, if they can get close to that, 215, whatever is expected to be, I think that would be a significant win for everybody. And I wouldn't be too shocked if it does kind of get right back in that range. I mean, if we see normalcy coming, I think those numbers should get back to normal pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've definitely been one of those middle-class cuts before in my career, so I feel you there, Nick. Hey, if I had to ask you, okay, with the current salary cap, what we think it's going to be, if it is 185, we know how much the Saints are over. How many more moves do you think the Saints have to make? Because they've made some moves. They've been a little bit on the smaller scale. I know the Drew deal was a big one, but how many more moves are we talking? Because eventually, don't they have to make one of the bigger moves?
I went through it, and I don't think they have to make big moves. I mean, you can get under the cap, restructuring a handful of guys,
right,
and just cut Malcolm Brown and who's the other one, Quan Alexander. If you cut those two, and look, one of the things we should update here, I thought Quan had an injury guarantee that was going to prevent them from making a move. That injury guarantee doesn't kick in until April, so they could cut him kind of scot-free right now and clear all that money. If they wait until April, they would have to pay him $2 million. So I think something is probably going to happen with him relatively quickly because you just can't carry him at $13 million.
Dang.
So if you do that, you cut Malcolm Brown, there's $18 million right there. You can restructure Mike Thomas, extend Tron Armstead, do Ramczyk, do Lattimore, a couple other moves, and you can get $10-15 million under the cap by only cutting two guys. I don't know if that's the path they're going to take. You would have to do like an aggressive restructure with Taysom Hill to get his number down to kind of, avoid having to cut Emmanuel Sanders or trade him or one of these other moves. So, yeah, I mean, there probably very likely is maybe one where people are going to be like, I
right,
hated losing that guy. But I think they can get to that point without really shaking up too much. So, I mean, all the talk about the cap stuff, we're going to get through it. The Saints aren't going to do anything too crazy. And, people are still going to act like, a year from now that they can't manage it if that cap number goes up. And this is what they do every year. I mean,
right,
it shouldn't surprise anybody. And, they're going to get through it. And I don't think that the team's going to look too much different than it did from a year ago.
Real quick, is there anything you can get for a guy like Malcolm Brown? Because it's not because of his level of play that you're probably going to release him, but it's because of the cap hit. He's still in his 20s. Can you go get maybe even a late round pick for a guy like Malcolm Brown?
I think somebody should trade for him if they can afford the contract.
Right.
He's really helped their run defense. I think he was the key to them being, near the top of the league in those run defense metrics. I think they're going to miss him if they lose him. But, the one thing this team has done really well over the last few years is scouted and signed undrafted defensive tackles. They have decent depth there. They'll probably find a couple more guys this year to bring in. And, I don't think they want to lose him. But, yeah, I mean, he's a valuable player. But it's just, the way that this season has played out. He's a middle-class guy. You can't really justify paying a guy like that, $3, $4, $5 million. If there's a team with significant resources, sure, but I know his name's being dangled out there. It doesn't really seem like there's been too many bites. All it takes is one, and he's out of there. But that's something that could happen. I think Quan probably happens soon. I wouldn't be surprised if a Ramczyk extension happens in the near future. So they are working, and I think we're going to start seeing significant action, pretty quickly here.
Yeah. So man, Quan though, what could have been not for that freaking Achilles last year. That's one of the great what ifs to me of the recent Saints times. So how about this, Nick? When we're talking to Nick Underhill, New Orleans Football, sign up for the site now. Don't hesitate. Go do it. Who are they potentially going to extend? Because you talked about, how in a lot of these extensions to get creative with the money, you end up having to tie yourself to these players for a few years. It may be like an older Cam Jordan. Is that the best? Or what other players are you maybe worried about extending in that manner that you may just have to in order to make this all work?
I don't know if there's any that I'm really worried about as far as a true extension. They'll do Ramczyk. I know that they probably want to try to get Lattimore done. I don't know how easy that one will be, but I think that's something that I think they need to be motivated with. And Lattimore has a lot of leverage in that deal just because they do need the cap space. So that'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I think Tron's probably someone that might get an extension. And, he's a little bit older, but I don't think you're really worried about the quality of play. It'd just be the injury stuff. But I think he's managed that a little bit better the last 2 years. So maybe add 3 years onto his deal, take it out to, 32, 33, however old he'd be at that time. So, I think those ones will be coming. But, yeah, they're going to have to structure these deals in a way that kind of aggressively pushes the money into the future. And, you can do that and save a lot now. Like if you do Ramczyk, whatever the numbers are, you can kind of look at Alvin's deal and it's $15 million per season, a true 12.5. The last year's kind of funny money, but they got that number in the first year for this upcoming season down to $5 million. And, next year there's a $6 million roster bonus. So it's things like that. The signing bonus prorates all the way out. The $6 million is basically an addition to the signing bonus, but it sits there and then they'll change that into a signing bonus prorated out. So they'll have to do things like that and just kind of leave lumps of money in future years. So yeah, it kind of does set little bombs off, but if you're comfortable, with Ramczyk, if you're doing a 5-year deal, you could leave little amounts of money all the way through the 5 years. And I don't think that you're going to be saddled with any regret by the end of it. So as long as they're smart with where they're putting this money, I think you can kind of, use those future years, the plan that the cap's going to inflate maybe a little bit more aggressively than you have in the past, and it works out. But, maybe with Toronto, you wouldn't want to have, a ton of money guaranteed at the back end of that deal, but, maybe you have to bite the bullet and risk that a little bit just to help you get through this situation now.
Nick Underhill, Nick_Underhill on Twitter. New Orleans Football is the site. As you can tell from talking to him, nobody has a better grasp on this team, its finances, or just really the team as a whole than does Nick. So go, if you're a Saints fan, go do yourself a favor, sign up for the site, New Orleans Football. Nick, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for waking up for me, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
Appreciate
what
that.
The hell, dude? What was that?
Major shout out.
Just take the knife out of my kidney the next time, Nick, when you answer the phone. All right, when we get back, we got Alyssa Lane coming up at 9:30. Maybe a little fun thing. If you want to think during the break about songs that make you cry, we could revisit a little bit of what we did on Twitter. I know, relax, Moose. I know sometimes you want to be a little hard-hearted.
Yeah,
okay.
No, it's just the way you said that. We can do something fun. Let's talk about what makes us cry.
Well, that's actually a good point too, Moose.
Okay. But it's not always
fair point, Moose.
Sad tears. Okay, sometimes it's happy as well. What do you know? Turn off the bed.